Hello, this is Pete Andrews with Smarter Solutions, and today we're going to be going over Smarter AP Automation. To start with, we want to discuss the objectives for AP Automation. In our case, we're trying to focus on the key goals that most businesses need. And for Smarter AP, the primary goal is to enhance and simplify the entire vendor invoice management process, including both the acquisition and reconciliation stages, ensuring a seamless and efficient workflow. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, we're going to log in as an accounts payable clerk. Let's start by looking at how invoices get into the system. First, if they're physical invoices that have arrived via USPS and envelopes, that sort of thing, the physical copies can be scanned in on a scanner. The second, and maybe the most efficient, is to come in via email. The system is capable of monitoring an inbox and watching for the inbound emails, extracting the information from the email and the attachment to import it into the system. And then we can also physically import files. And as an example, let's do that now. There's two ways. You can go to select files to browse for them, or you can drag and drop the files. We'll do drag and drop for now. Select these three and drop those in there. Now, you can see up here at the top, there's some really interesting things. Whether you're bringing things in as an email or you're importing them, the system is capable of noting whether or not these are a single document or multiple documents in a single file. So they can be split by the system. So it could come in as one invoice per email in the case of emails, it could come in as multiple attachments, or even a single file where we're splitting those based on this information. So we'll go ahead and click upload. And now we can see those have disappeared. So we'll jump back over to the verify page. Now we can see there's some that are already here. So some of these two here at the top would have come in via email. Let's take a look at those. So we can see that looks pretty clean. If I go back, can also view it this way and print the documents. You can get a better look that way. And in addition, we can see here the Kraft Heinz. These are some new ones. Let's take a look at those real quick. Now this one is a little bit fuzzier. You can see these actually came in through a scan. So we've got a little bit of each, and then we've got the ones that we imported. So the Tyson ones are starting to show up. There we are, and so those have been processed. Again, of the three different methods, whether scanning or uploading or emailing, emailing is the most efficient. It's the one that the majority of our clients use. We set up an inbox, we monitor the inbox and automatically ingest all of the invoices that are sent to that inbox, whether it's a combined PDF that's being split after it comes in, or whether they're arriving as individual PDFs or as multiple attachments. All right. Once the documents have been ingested, they will land here in the verify page. And effectively, this is a task list to work through. That can be organized in a number of different ways. Clicking on any of these columns will reorganize the data. As an example, you might want to work through by due date, right? And organize these so that it's for whichever one is due first. Now this is organized by any of the columns. Just clicking on one of these changes the order based on that column. In our case, we'll end up sorting by supplier name. But let's say when you look at this, it either has things you don't want, like this external ID, or it's missing something you might like to have. We can also go to the settings pane here, and we can adjust what's visible. So if I want to say remove external ID, I can come find that, click here, and that column disappears. So I can clean up my view if I want that way. As a last note, we can also move some of these around. Perhaps the received column doesn't make a lot of sense for me at the front of the list. We can adjust where those things lie so that we're working in a view that makes the most sense for us. So from here, let's go ahead and jump into the verify process. To start working through these, you could, of course, click on any one of them and it would open that single one. And when you completed it, it would return you back to the list to choose the next one you wanted to work on. You can select all of them or none of them and hit start, and that will just work you through the whole list. Okay, to show how the list works, the actual processing of these, let's pick a couple and we'll go through them and then we'll have the system return us back to the main list. So I'm going to pick a few of these. I'm going to tell it to start. And then when it loads up, we can see here that we've got a Tyson Foods invoice. And one of the first things that matters here is about identification. So to identify the invoice, the system is doing this by recognizing multiple things. It looks at the logo, the address, and other elements. If we look over here on the right, we can see there's a number of different things that we now know about the system, or from the system we know about the invoice. Tasty Foods, Tyson Foods is the supplier name. We have the supplier number, which is actually an internal value, and then document type, PO number. Okay, this is an interesting one. Let's click on this. This is a really a critical element here when you think about the way that our solution works versus other things that try to do what we do. So the PO number, when I click on it, first off, it jumps me to the PO number on the form. So what's happening here is the system is extracting this value and it's using our connectivity to pull additional information from your core systems. I really can't stress this enough, but as you can see here, when we clicked on the PO, it jumps us to the PO number on this on the form. What's happening is the PO number is being extracted, and then the system is using that information to pull additional data from the core systems it's connected to on your network. That's very different than what you'll find with other solutions that try to do AP processing. I've seen multiple that expect you to import PO documents in order to be able to process. And that is fraught with challenge. Just like when we get a scanned document, we try to OCR and pull data from that. The systems are good at OCR, but it's never as good as raw, accurate system data. And so we try to rely on system data as anytime it is available. So we pull the data from the document and go look up the rest to get that, rather than trying to pull information out of a PO document that's been scanned in. So our accuracy level is far higher than most systems you would encounter. Additionally, if we look at this, we think about what can we connect to and how do we connect. We connect in three main ways. We connect via database connection if we're on the same system. We connect via web APIs if your system is web-based. And then we even have the ability to capture print spool files automatically and allow them to continue to pass through. So any document that's flowing into or out of your system, we can capture the data stream, or the data where it resides and interact with it to provide the most accurate matching possible. Now let's take a look at this. So over here, you'll see on these items, there is a magnifying glass. So if I click on this, it's going to load up information that is known to us by the system. And at the moment, what you see is PO number, line number, supplier number, et cetera, over to the total. But that's not everything that's in here. Again, just like we can expose information through the others, we have a multitude of columns available. I'm not going to show more columns that way, but I am going to scroll over to show you a few really interesting ones. So what we see here is after total, you'll see delivered quantity. That is not known from the PO, and it's not known from the invoice. That data is coming from the receiver. And that's a really critical element. Now, invoiced quantity is also really important. If we had been invoiced for some of these items before, the invoiced quantity would show us, right? We might be partially invoiced. We might place an order for 20 items and 15 of them come in. And then we have another 5 that are supposed to be there. And then they invoice us, and they invoice us for the first 15, and then they invoice us again, but they invoice us for 20 because that's what was on the original order. And so those things can happen. And if they do, this would catch it right here. It would say that we had been invoiced previously for 15. So that's a really critical element. Let's jump out here. The other thing that's interesting there when we think about the PO data we saw, or the invoice data or the receiver data, is that when it comes to the PO portion, different teams work in different ways. And what I mean by that is some teams will close out a PO if they're receiving things in and doing the invoicing process and they ordered 20 and they got 15. They might close that PO out and open a new PO. Other teams will leave the PO open and have the remaining 5. The system is very flexible. Smarter AP automation can handle any of those situations. So flexibility is paramount. And a moment ago, you heard me mention that when we pull the data in and work through using your business logic and compare the data from these 3 different elements, the invoice, the PO, and the receiver, we're doing that with an AI engine. And that's an interesting element, an important one too, because there are no templates to build and manage. When you think about recognizing the documents, it's the AI engine internally that's doing this. And it figures it out based off of historical documents that it has, so it gets even better as it goes. But you don't have to create a template for each one. And we think that's very important, so it's worth noting. So to complete this example, we can look at this and notice right away there's most of these things are green on here, right? We don't see any yellow over here, just invoice date and invoice due date. And the reason those are yellow is because these are from an older document that we use for our demos. So it's going to crop up like this and we jump through. Now something just happened. Once we cleared those 2 out, at the bottom, the OK button went from grayed out to green. So now when we see the big green OK button, we know it's already looked over everything and it's good to go. So I can press OK to move on to the next document. All right, and on this next one, same sort of thing. We can scroll through these. We don't see any issues there. We can look around on this document, see if there's any issues there. Nothing to worry about. So we can tell that the system fully recognized this, no issues, 100% accurate. The only thing we see getting caught is, again, those old dates. So I'm just going to clear those out like so. And now I'm going to press OK, and we're going to move on. Now, if you remember what I said before, we only chose 2 to work through. So what does the system do? It returns us back to the main list to say, what do you want to do next from your tasks? And now you can also see the other ones are removed. They're not here anymore. So this time I'm not going to check any of these. I'm just going to click Start, and it's going to work me from the beginning to the end. All right, and so here we have our first invoice with something interesting going on. First things first, we have our dates, which we can move through quickly. And then right away, you notice it jumped right down here to our next highlighted place. And there's also a little icon drawing our attention to line items. There's an issue in there somewhere. Just in case this item was further down, you didn't see it right away, you'd still have a chance to see this one here. And then on the screen itself, it drew a box right around the 573. So it pops up a message right next to that. It says the invoice unit price is greater than the purchase order unit price of 542. Now, we can take a closer look at this, jumping over to line 3's magnifying glass, which opens the search area for everything. Now, remember again, this is the same view we had before. We're seeing over here on the left all the PO information through the total column. Then we see the delivered quantity, the invoice quantity, which also does, I mentioned the invoice quantity handles if there's a variance and we've already been invoiced for something. That same logic works on whole invoices. If we don't have anything open and then someone tries to invoice us, it would catch that as an inappropriate invoice. Or if we've already paid for it, that sort of thing, it would catch whole invoices too. So in here, let's take a specific look. I'm going to jump up here to line number, and I'm just going to type in 3 and hit enter to get straight to that third line and just look at that one. And we can see here that we have a unit price of 542, which is what the message told us. And yet here we were invoiced at 573. So that's not okay. So we need to figure out why. Also, you might notice that the totals are different. 2865 says what they want to try to bill us for. And at 542, of course, they should be billing us at 2711. So we can clearly tell that there's something off with this. And oh, I zoomed in there. In order to get this rectified, we need to forward this. We actually need to do a PO routing for approval and let somebody look at this, try to figure out what's going on. So then the question is, who do we send this to? And if I click here and I start typing buyer, it will give me some options, but then I'm not sure who it was. So we can find out which buyer it is. It is possible to get to it from the PO data that fields that you have pulled up, but it's not. Most people end up using this one. We have multiple tables that we're connected into systems when we set this solution up. And so jumping to the PO number, which is a link here, we can see that we have the buyer information as well. We can see that, oh, it's buyer 2 that we need to send this to. So we can just select buyer 2, and now it's ready for routing. Now we can add a comment, etc. too. But one thing I want to touch on, just like I clicked on this PO, how it's underlined, if I come up here and I click on these, this means that it's also connected too. So we can see here there's Tyson Foods. If I click on supplier number, pulls up the same thing. But this is a restricted view, but it's actually connecting into a table with all of this information in it. Like if for some reason it didn't pick up who it was, we'd be able to see the suppliers and select them. So you can go in and tell the system how to find things as well. I can even tell it to remap information if I want from the document here. I can tell it where to find things. So in this case, I've got like article number, I've got description. So as an example, I could double click on descriptions and it would remap those. So pretty powerful stuff. Definitely helps you to get through these things. So for now, we've routed this to our person for approval. Let them take a look at this and figure out what happened with the pricing. So let's add in a comment. Up here at the top, you've got several different bars. We've got information bars. We can make attachments. We can see a history, and we can add a comment. So here for our comment, we'll throw a small message in here. Let's say, please note, line 3, and then we can go back to the document through the document, or the data through the document button. And then the PO approval routing field, you can see we've got the buyer's ID. And this field, you saw it using Smart Fill as we did. Once we have this done, we can go ahead and click the OK button. And it'll accept these. And now we can push it through for PO approval. So, and this one, it's a uniform company, so we want to route this to our VP of Ops. If I type in VP, it starts to find it. Perfect, my VP of Ops. And the idea there is we want to get it to the correct department for approval. And I also want to add a comment and approve. All right, so we got a comment on there now. And it's ready for forwarding. But before we go any further, notice something else. Over here on the left, we have the accounting tab. There's no line item tab. And on the accounting tab, it's got already GL coded information. That's because the system remembers what you did with this in the past. When you had a similar invoice from a similar person, similar items like that, this is the GL coding. So it's a suggestion. So we're gonna delete this out for now. I'm gonna remove that because I want to show it to you in another spot. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this through, and we'll check out the next one. So same idea here. We want to forward this to the IT director. So I type IT. Here we are. And looks like it wants to go, but we'll go ahead and add a comment. And I can add attachments, but we'll show that in a bit. And we're going to leave the GL coding in place on this one. And then that moves us through. And now we've got PO number back and we've got items. So this, though, if you notice, this is the Kraft Heinz. This is one of those scanned documents. This is a 10-page document here. Okay, quite a lot of information. But look, there's no indicators on this. So that's pretty impressive. This has been brought in and extracted and identified perfectly without any issue. Over here on the right-hand side, everything looks green as well, except for the invoice dates. Just jump through those again. And then notice down here, we even picked up an allowance. So that's interesting. Let's see if we can find that allowance. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. All right, so if it's not here, it's probably closer to the end of the set. So I'm going to jump to the last page. Not quite. Let me jump back one more. And there it is. Payment terms allow. Okay, so they're allowing 848 and 41 cents, and there it is. The negative sign's on the right, and we still applied it correctly over here. So we're identifying the allowance on the 9th page out of 10 in order to find that value, and it just did it automatically. All right, now here's another one for Kraft. Looks pretty straightforward. This one's a one-pager, or two-pager, I apologize. You can see our payment terms are right here. It picked it up again. So that's a different page, but it's still figuring it out, right? Let's go ahead and accept this one and move on. Now again, look at this. We have 803. We've got another one of these. Well, so far it was near the end. So let's go to the end and back up one. Sure enough, there's our payment allowance. And got picked up just fine, no issues. So we're going to go ahead and click OK and move on to the next one. And so here's a dot foods invoice. Oh boy, if if you got any experience with dot food invoices, which most of us do, you know these ones can be pretty tricky. In this case, it's a one pager, so it's really not as bad as some of the other ones. But either way, we were able to automatically extract all the information, identify the PO, do all the comparisons, and we have a clean check all the way through. So just fix those dates, hit OK, and that concludes this section. We'll jump in as the buyer two. And so we can see we just have the one in here for the buyer. In real world, obviously, you'd probably have quite a bit more. So there's yellow over here, the comments. Your team gets used to where these things are and pull this up. It says here, please note line 3 shows a higher amount than the unit price on the PO. Please advise. So down here, right now it's sitting on accounting when you click on line items, and then we got the line items, okay. And we can take a look at this. If I click on it, it jumps me right to where the items are. And then if I go in and take a look, the unit price, I can see it's 542 on the PO, and yet 573 on our line item. And so over here, we can add a new comment. Say, okay to pay at higher rate. There we go. So we've added another comment. And also, an area that you may not have noticed so far, down here in the bottom, you can see buyer 2 and AP2. It's showing us the status of the workflow. And there's also a history here, a log of everything that's going on. You can see here at the top, I just entered in this OK to pay. So you can see a history of the documents. So the logging on this system is really excellent as well. So very helpful. And from here, we'll go ahead and click the green OK button to keep this moving. There we go, and that clears those out. Now we're going to log out again, log back in as the IT director. There we go. All right, we can see that our IT director has the invoice forwarded for approval. Take a look, double click on that. We can see there are comments. Take a look at that. It says, please approve and attach quote. Let's go ahead and attach something. And the request said to also provide approval. So we'll say, this is approved for payment. There we are. So we provided the attached the quote and confirmed approval in the comments. And we're going to leave the GL coding as it is. That's already there. So that's nice because it looks like somebody already applied the GL code for us by the time it got here. And that's actually controllable within the system. You can set it up so that any number or any user or user types are allowed to provide GL coding. So it just depends on how you want to use the system. Very flexible there as well. Go ahead and click OK on this. And now that's processed, so we can go ahead and log out. Next, we'll come in as the VP of Operations. So the VP of Operations, I'm going to bring that one up. And again, we see we've got the uniform invoice. Now, this is one that is likely to have been seen before, right? This is the sort of thing you might have on a periodic basis. Notice in this one, there's no GL coding attached. Let's go over and look in here. It says, please attach quote and provide approval. And this time, for our VP, we're going to say it doesn't add a comment and move on, because that happens, real world scenario. Let's go ahead and log out of here. And next, we're going to come back in as the AP2 clerk. So now we've gotten quite a bit back. So let's take a look at this. Start, got a response from buyer 2. Let's go check the comments. It says okay to pay at the higher rate. Okay, great. Next is the uniform company, the document from our VP of Operations. We can see that it still hasn't been GL coded. And if we go to the attachments, there's no attachments, and our VP did not add an approval comment. So that's not ideal. First thing we can do is go ahead and add in the GL coding. So one thing we could do is we could start typing, just hit a space, and it'll give us options if we want. Or I can hit this refresh, which will try to use whatever it's seen in the past, and it automatically GL codes it. That looks good. We'll go ahead and leave that. So you could edit these as well afterward if you needed to. Now, because we don't have the approval comment on this, rather than pushing it through fully approved, we're going to reject this one. We're going to push it back. So let's hit here, say missing approval, and that'll push it back to the rejection process, pushes it back to the party in the approval queue. So I'm going to hit OK on this, and on it goes. Now the next one for our computer company, we see the GL coding is accurate already here, which is great. We'll check the attachment. It appears to be here, and we have an approval statement on this, which is also great. So we should be good to approve. We click OK to process, and there we go. So at this point, we have completed our processing. If you like what you saw here, please feel free to reach out to us at info@smartercms.com. That's SMRTRCMS.com. Also, you can check the description in the video for web links. Thank you so much.